Hello, everyone, and welcome on into another edition of Navigating Trump 2.0. This is the show that takes a look back at the week that was in Washington, D.C. through the lens of the second Trump administration. And joining me, as they do every week, CBN Chief Political News Analyst CBN News Chief Political Analyst David Brody. We'll get this right. It took me 3 times to actually get into the podcast here today, so I feel like that's just a speed bump. We're just going to roll right through that one.
Call me whatever you want. Call me whatever you want.
Exactly. And host of the CBN podcast Quick Start, Dan Andros. Gentlemen, as you can see, I'm firing on all cylinders as we get started here today. Much like Republicans firing on all cylinders after the election. No, that's not true at all.
No.
The Democrats clearly feeling pretty good about things as we record this on Thursday morning. We are a little bit more than 24 hours since the elections on Tuesday night. And clearly, David, Democrats feeling good, Republicans doing a little bit of soul searching, trying to figure out where they go from here. Now that we've had a little bit of time to digest everything that happened on Tuesday night in Virginia, in New Jersey, in California, and New York, of course, with the mayoral race. Do you have any bigger takeaways or anything that, with a little bit of the passage of time since Tuesday night, that you're that you're thinking about since the elections?
The passage of time. No, look, for Republicans, this is going to be a hangover that lasts quite a long time. I mean, this is the off-year version of the Titanic, off-year election version of the Titanic for the Republican Party. And I guess if in terms of time, passages, and thought process, which is kind of tough to put that in the same sentence when it comes to me, there are a couple things I'm thinking. First of all, what will be the lesson that Republicans learn out of this? If the lesson is going to be a bury your head in the sand lesson, and it's not going, it's not a big deal, then they got the wrong message. Now, conversely, the message is not, well, this is a referendum on Trump. It's a referendum on Trump's agenda. It is spiraling out of control for Republicans. They've got to ditch the agenda. They got to ditch the platform. That's not what any of that was at all. So I think what it really came down to is that the Democrat base is angry, and it's not just the far left. You're talking about people in the center left. Those folks are frustrated, and they're mobilizing. And when you have anger and mobilization together, you better watch out if you're a Republican. And I think that's kind of the big takeaway. So they should take it seriously. And I think they are, and I'll tell you why. Because this week, President Trump, of course, had the senators over for some nice breakfast the morning after this election. And normally the cameras are there for the whole time, but instead it was like cameras are there for X amount of minutes. And then he was like, okay, cameras out. We're going to have a come to Jesus talk. I mean, that's what it was. We're going to have a heart-to-heart talk. And the fact that Trump did not want the cameras there, I think, says everything you need to know, which is that there's some frank talk going on right now about what in the world just happened. Now, to be clear, it's not seismic because it's off-year elections, but the Democrats overperformed. And I think it's important. I'm hearing a lot of conservatives say that, it's blue states holding serve, if you will, that it's just a blue state, and there's still a blue state, so nothing changed. If that's what you got out of this, you're going to see some problems later on.
Yeah,
because they overperformed, guys, and that's the key. The overperformance should signal to them that there's something going on within the electorate.
Well, there's an inconsistency in that argument too. You can't tout the fact that Trump was making all of these inroads in these blue areas 1 year ago and then say, well, it doesn't matter. They're blue states. This is not unexpected that it went this way, right? I mean, like you can't, it's kind of having your cake and eating it too a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's a good point, because in 2021, Chitterelli was very close.
Yeah.
And he wasn't this time around. I do think you can make that argument if you're Trump and say, well, look, I wasn't on the ballot and we did some great stuff in 2024 in New Jersey. And now in 2025, a year later, I'm not on the ballot and look what happened. I mean, I think you can make that argument if you're Trump. Mm-hmm. But still, Chitterelli had a worse performance this time around 4 years later.
Dan, one of the things that David said that I think is interesting, and I don't know the answer to this question. I don't know that anybody really has a good sense on what the answer to this question is. So I'm going to present it to you. So
Great.
Congratulations. Right out of the gate here. clearly, I mean, David was saying, and I think he's right, that Democrats to the in the middle and the center, and of course to the far left, are angry, and they mobilized, they got out, they hit the streets. I mean, they were out in force in these elections in Virginia and in New Jersey, and of course in New York and in California. But if they weren't mad at what Donald Trump is doing in the White House, like if they're not upset with, the tariffs and some of the other, larger policy issues that Trump is doing, cracking down on immigration, the ICE raids, all of the things that you hear from Democrats on the left talking about Trump and his overreach, what they say is his overreach of power with the executive branch, then what are they angry about? Because it seems to me that everything that everyone's angry about, everything comes from the White House, right? The whole everything in this country, it's like from the White House down, and everything else kind of filters down from that. Or am I misreading it?
Listen, I mean, like you said, that's the $1 million question. What exactly is it that's, really driving this? And, I think the incumbent, I mean, it's just the fact of the matter is whatever's going wrong in the country, I think it's easier to sort of be on the attack mode, right? And then just being constantly in that mode and being like, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. And you're going to have a better chance at getting people out to the polls, especially in an off-year election, over that sort of messaging than you are about just, hey, just give it time, things are going great. But, it'll be interesting to see what unfolds because, while, David, you're right, like you can't just bury your head in the sand and say, blue states, you got to look at the numbers and say, yes, there's overperformance. But there is part of that that's true. It is blue states, right? Like, and so you can't, just like Republicans can't shrug it off, Democrats can't also, I think, take this and say, we've got a mandate now here in America, everybody. I mean, those same Democrats were saying Trump didn't have a mandate after, winning the election last November. So they can't have their cake and eat it too on this whole mandate thing and look out. I mean, Republicans, though, saying that would be wise to say, wait a minute, what is going on here? And finding a real answer, John, to that question that you're having, because I do think there is real pain out there. I mean, every American still can feel it. I mean, Trump did promise the golden age of America. And while he's delivered to his constituents and his voters on a lot of things, everything's still expensive. Last time I checked, every time I go somewhere and buy something, it's ridiculously expensive. I mean, healthcare costs and the stuff that's going on with that are out of control. And still at the grocery store, everything's super high. Gas still high, still lingering over $3 a gallon in my area. And it's been that way forever. So there are things going on. And I think getting to the bottom of that as to what might be going on here beyond just New York, Virginia, and New Jersey is really job number one for Republicans to find out.
I think the answer to the question too is what Dan pretty much said, and I'll just say it a different way, which is the PR aspect to this. Democrats basically channeled to look. Affordability is an issue for people, but the Democrats were able to PR-wise message that very well and basically say, we know you're angry about it, but let me tell you why you really, really, really should be angry about it. And, they had a good message. Republicans, on the other hand, are, and it starts with Trump. I mean, he's going around saying the economy's great. We're in the golden age. It's amazing. Well, once again, back to what Biden did in his first term, he kept saying everything was great too, and people didn't feel that. So if you're going to have the disconnect with voters, that's a problem. Now, we're starting to see President Trump start to say, yeah, beef prices are a problem. We got to bring that down. We got this. So that's good to see because Trump always speaks positively about everything he's doing. So the fact that he would just say something a little bit negative maybe suggests that they got to figure out a way to message this differently because it's not resonating right now.
Yeah, and David, last thing on this before we move on, do you sense a pivot is coming from the White House where there's less talk about tariffs, where there's less pursuit on these international stories? I mean, he's talked a lot about the wars that he has been ending, and clearly, the White House is really pushing for like a Nobel Peace Prize thing. I mean, I really feel like they've been focused more on the international side of things than really drilling down on the kitchen table stuff that got him elected.
So a couple of things on that. Remember, the big, beautiful bill passed in July 4th, right? And so it's what now, November? So we always talked, as in the economic experts, actually, and I'm not one, but they talked about Q1 of 2026 is when we start to see some of that. So I think you'll see the pivot coming up probably after Christmas into the new year. And then you'll start to say they're going to have to figure out a way to basically say, look, it's not as bad as what Democrats are telling you, but then they're going to have to prove it. Rather than just by osmosis. And they can start with gas prices. I know you mentioned gas prices, Dan, but under where I'm living in the suburbs of Washington, D.C., it's under $3 a gallon. It's $2.79, $2.89. Yeah. So, I mean, they could start with gas prices overall. I mean, even in your situation where you say it's over $3, I mean, the Biden, what was it? Biden was 4.5, high threes. The point is that's come down. 100% that's come down. So they start with that. They get two or three other things, and they start to really message that out. The big, beautiful bill comes, and hopefully you see they see some of that in Q1, and then maybe you have a different scenario. But in answer to your question, John, I do think a pivot is coming, but it has to be a strategic pivot at the right time. Yeah. That's the way I see it.
Let's talk government shutdown. And the latest here on Thursday morning, the president, during his talk with congressional Republicans on Wednesday, did say to them, and this is one of the things that was captured, was that the Republicans were hurt on Tuesday night by the government shutdown, specifically in Northern Virginia. And you could certainly say Virginia is a specific case here because so many of these workers who are furloughed or out of a job and kind of trying to figure out what's going on right now, they were voting in this election. And there was huge turnout in some of the counties where we see a lot of these federal workers. So specifically in Virginia, a lot of Trump was saying essentially like this, even though the messaging has been to blame Democrats, it didn't feel like that was not reflected in the results on Tuesday night. Granted, in some counties that typically vote Democratic anyway here. But now as we are here on Thursday morning, David, it sounds as though a deal is in the works. I know that Republican Senator Marsha Blackburn spoke to you and some of your colleagues at Real America's Voice today, talking about days or hours maybe until a government shutdown deal is reached. Do you get the sense that we're close?
Yes. I think it'll be in the next 48 hours, possibly by the end of the week, by Monday for sure. And once again, can we cue up that 3/4 inch tape? I said it.
That's what you said.
I did. I said it would be this week. Now, I might be wrong because it might be Sunday, which would be technically next week, but you get the idea. We're seeing movement.
No credit for that, though. There's no credit for that, though. Nope. Next week.
No, 100%. I'm never going to get credit for anything. No. Okay. So enough of the sour grapes. So a couple of things. Let's take this through to where we're at today, right? We started with the federal workforce. It's a few 100,000 people in the suburbs of D.C. Okay, well, they'll be fine. Then we morphed into the SNAP program and food stamps. Then we're talking 42 million people. That was a problem. And now all of a sudden we are affecting every single American because every single American either travels or knows someone that's going to travel, or guess what? Thanksgiving is coming up, and that's going to be a big time travel season. So it's gone from a few 100,000 people to 42 million people to, wait for it, everyone. And when it gets to everyone, maybe it becomes political malpractice for both parties to say, let's keep this thing going. Look, it'll end. And it turns out it's not going to be the SNAP benefits that end it. That's one of the pegs in all of this. It's going to be the FAA situation. It's going to be the fact that the planes are going to cut back. And by the way, I fly tomorrow, so pray for me. But that's the deal, Dan Andros. I mean, in essence, it's come down to flights and affecting everyone, and you can't have that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Democrats would be chasing after fool's gold here if they look at a poll and say, well, so far, Republicans have been blamed for this because, like you said, when this hits every single person harder through just trying to get something in the mail, and the planes are taking longer, even the shipments are taking longer, everything like that, that will shift, and all of them will be getting blamed, and it will be every single person in there needs to take a long walk off a short pier, basically. So that's where I think that's headed.
Yeah. And John, can I just say one last thing?
Yeah.
Leave it to Trump to be the wild card, as he always is. And in this case, negatively for the Republicans. They're going along, and Johnson and Thune, they're a well-oiled machine, and they're just saying, we're not negotiating, we're not doing this. And then Trump comes out right after the midterm or the off-year elections and says, yeah, we got to open this government now. Come on, guys, let's go. and it's
and
just
use
not
the filibuster to do it.
Which, by the way, please go ahead, John. It's insane. I mean,
I was going to say it's a terrible idea.
Horrible idea.
No one should. I mean, there's a whole, like, the Senate has always been the brake, and it's because of the filibuster. Like there has to be at least one part of this federal government where a brake is somewhat applied, where the majority doesn't simply rule every single time. Like there has to be. That's what forces debate. It's what forces the House to slow things down sometimes, because even the House won't go forward with something if they know it's going to die in the Senate. Most of the time they do anyway, just to force a vote. But like there has to be some part of the government where you have to kind of work across the aisle to get a little bit of buyback from the other side, unless the American people are so with you on your entire platform that they give you 60 senators of one particular party. And then, okay, that's your mandate. There you go.
And this has been a line in the sand for Republicans, and good for them. Good for them in the Senate. We hear all of the narrative. Oh, no one stands up to Trump, which, is true in a lot of instances. In this case, no, that didn't happen. Senate Republicans said, yeah, Mr. President, with all due respect, absolutely not. We're not doing that. And good for them. I mean, Trump needs to stop being about Trump. Okay, that's what this is. He just wants victories. He just wants. Now, I get part of what he's saying. He's saying, look, the Democrats, when they get back in power, they're going to get rid of the filibuster anyhow. Okay, whatever. I don't know. Maybe they will. But that is not, you don't do something, regarding checks and balances in the government and something that should be there just to satisfy your own agenda in the moment and wonder and worry what's going to happen down the road. You don't do that. I mean, look what happened with Harry Reid. I mean, he did that back in, 2013 with the judges, that he went nuclear on the judges in terms of the federal appeals judges. He said, we're not going to do the filibuster. So it went down to 50 votes. Well, guess what? It came back to haunt him, because ask about John Roberts, ask about Neil Gorsuch, ask about Amy Coney Barrett, ask about Brett Kavanaugh. Onward and onward, because then the Supreme Court nominee threshold was 50, not 60. And it came back to bite the Democrats big time. So, no, they shouldn't be doing it. I'm glad they're not.
Let's talk a little bit about this rift on the right that has been growing, specifically with regards to Tucker Carlson and an interview that he did with avowed white supremacist Nick Fuentes last week. The Republican Party has also been on soul-searching mode with regard to this issue as well. And the Heritage Foundation got involved last week. Their president, Kevin Roberts, came out with a video forcefully defending Tucker Carlson and the interview that he did with Nick Fuentes. He disavowed what Fuentes was saying and said he abhors what Fuentes was saying, but offered a full-throated support of Tucker Carlson and the interview that took place, and said, we're not about cancel culture and we're not canceling anyone. Well, now a week later, he's had to go and do he did an event at a college recently. I think it was over the weekend. And then he came out with another video on Wednesday night where he's backtracking and apologizing. And this comes after a town hall with Heritage employees that was, by all the reporting that we've seen on this, extremely spirited, with both sides arguing one way or the other here. But David, this is kind of, morphing into what is the Republican Party right now, and what should it be moving forward? How many Republicans, what kind of Republicans do we let under the big tent? And what issues, what stances do Republicans take where they say, no, you're not allowed in. We are going to cancel you for this particular thing.
Right. So a couple of things. Let's be clear about Nick Fuentes and all these groypers and all these people, okay? They used to be MAGA. They are not MAGA anymore. They have, Nick Fuentes has been very clear on that. He can't stand Trump anymore. He's out. MAGA's not gone far enough for him. And Trump's not gone far enough. So let's just please not, I'm not saying you're doing this, but let's not frame it as like some MAGA is far right and they're anti-Semitic, okay? They're not MAGA. They used to support MAGA until they didn't, and they don't anymore in the second term. So they're no longer MAGA. They just aren't. So I think that's very, very important to point out. They're not Republicans for sure. They're not Republicans. But the reason we're talking about GOP and the anti-Semitism angle is because they're sure not going to be Democrats. And they were at once trying to figure out where their place was in the Republican Party. So now Republicans are going to have to deal with the leftover baggage of all of this. And where this goes, I don't know. I really don't. Dan, I'd be curious to get your take on this, because this is not going away. Nick Fuentes, he's just, I'm a Christian, so I won't use any words that I probably shouldn't use. But fill in the blank, everybody out there. And it's not good. But I don't know. I mean, he says he has a voice out there. He's got millions of followers. The young male demo in MAGA is growing, and I'm very concerned about where this is going. Unless the JD Vances of the world, the Marco Rubios, the President Trump, though President Trump will be out of here in a few years, but the next generation of leaders have got to nip this in the bud. If they don't, that, according to Josh Hammer, who was in a piece I did for 700 Club this week, Josh Hammer wrote a book on Israel and civilization and has been slammed by Candace Owens, who's got her own Jewish conspiracy tropes. Josh Hammer said that would be the death knell of the Republican Party. It will no longer cease to exist. And he believes that at that point, because the Republican Party is really the only party fighting for the values of Western civilization, he believes that you can make the argument that potentially Western civilization may go with it. That's a pretty bold statement, but I understand what he's saying, because if you let anti-Semitism get involved and get a root and a foothold inside that Republican Party, that's game, set, match.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. There is actually just a lot going on here. It's more than just, Nick Fuentes and, his views, right? This is something, deeper that I think has, in large part, the door has been open to this, thanks in large part to a lot of kind of weak-kneed republicanism that has been perceived over the last 20 years of letting progressive Democrats sort of intimidate and bully into kind of submission, and we've got to police the language of the right. We can't offend these progressive Democrats with things. And I think Trump tapped into part of that sentiment by just saying whatever he was going to say, right? He just would say what he saw and call it like it is, and people like that. And so I think this movement in part is that on steroids. And I mean, and you're seeing it like Tucker Carlson, his next interview is he's going after Lindsey Graham, right? And so these aren't like the Lindsey Grahams of the world. This is not new that a lot of conservatives aren't big fans of Lindsey Graham on a lot of things. And so, but it is this larger perception that the Republicans haven't done enough to weed out this extreme leftism. And then you see things like, look what's happening in places in Europe with immigration run amok, and they're losing the culture. Like they're becoming, like they are kind of, tiptoeing around. Oh, we don't want to offend the Muslims. And then next thing you know, like there's all this, crazy influx of Muslims in these countries, and they're not assimilating to these countries. And so I think that is a big concern that people see, along with, on top of that, white men being blamed for everything, right? Like, I mean, you can celebrate every culture in America today except for the white culture. That's bad, right? Like just that sentiment alone, young people growing up in that, I think they're seeing people, give a voice to that frustration and what they're seeing, and it's a fear, and they're tapping into that. And I think we need voices now that can speak to some of these issues, right? Like you're going to get a lot of agreement on immigration and curbing immigration, and not assimilating into the idea of America, and to celebrating freedom and the history of America. And so there's a lot at play here. I mean, I could keep going, but I think it's those sorts of things, and it's sort of, kind of reached a boiling point here. And people like Nick Fuentes, they take extreme ideas and then capture a lot of these young minds.
And the biggest part of that problem is they try to cloak it in biblical theology.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest part of this. And that's where, you really need to have a discerning spirit here and understand what's going on. I mean, this is all really cloaked in, because Nick Fuentes and many of these gropers and Tucker Carlson too, all believe in, and Candace Owens, they all believe in replacement theology. Replacement theology basically replaces the Jews, right? I mean, when I say replaces the Jews, the churches replace the Jews. But here's the thing. When you do that, first of all, it's wrong theologically, okay? Even if you want to have a debate, you can have a debate about it, but they're wrong. But anyhow, you have the debate. But here's the point. When you do that, right or wrong, doesn't matter. When you do that, then you can say anything you want about today's modern day Jews. You can say anything you want because they're not the Jews of the Bible. They're not Moses. They're not Aaron. They're not these people. They're not the great men of the Bible that were Jews. No. That's old school. No, these Jews, these are bad Jews. These are Netanyahu, all of the folks in Israel, the people at Columbia University that are going to school just trying to get to class. Those are the bad Jews. So replacement theology is extremely dangerous because you're basically minimizing and basically discounting Jews of today, because you have to do that in replacement theology. Because otherwise, I mean, if you don't, then they would be your brothers, if you will. And I say brothers in the sense that, biblically, right? They would be the Jews of yesteryear. But if they're not, if you were able to say they're not, well, then you can say anything you want about the Jews of today. It's really, really dangerous, guys.
It is. And I just add the one other frustrating thing about that is even if you take the biblical connection out of the equation, it makes logical sense for America to be an ally with Israel, just given their culture, given where they are in the middle of a bunch of, largely Muslim countries that are hostile to them and to Western ideology and Western civilization. It makes sense for us to support them in a lot of ways. And so, but it's kind of gotten off, and it's just, I mean, you see what Candace is doing. Nick Fuentes, there's a Jew hiding in every corner, and they're blaming them on every issue imaginable, even things like the Charlie Kirk assassination.
And that doesn't mean you have to agree with everything that the Israeli government is doing,
right,
or every way that the United States supports the Israeli government. Like there's policy debates that you can have with regard to what Israel is doing and how we're supporting them and all that. But I think that's the difference. Like having a policy debate is different than blaming. And that's where a lot of this is just coming from, like blaming the Jewish. And this has been going on for centuries, where the Jewish people get blamed for all the world's problems. And that's
thousands of years.
And that straw man argument, by the way, it's such a straw man argument when people, I mean, Candace does this a lot. Like, you can't criticize Israel. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, stop.
Are you kidding me? Who doesn't criticize it? Lots of people are out there criticizing Israel. Like, it's certainly allowed. And that's a complete straw man.
And by the way, let's be honest, we know it's a spiritual battle when, wait for it, 0.2% of the world's population is Jewish. 0.2%. And all this over the Jews? Thank you, God. You're on the throne. We got you. Wink, wink.
Well, that seems like a good place to leave it there for this week. Gentlemen, David Brody, Dan Andros, we'll leave it there till next week. Thanks once again for joining me here on Navigating Trump 2.0.
Thanks, John.